Hello, everyone. Am I unmuted? Yes, perfect. Hi. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this wonderful Wednesday of Brunch with ECOS. We're going to be doing a chat today about direction. Ooh, yay. I have two wonderful panelists here. I have Michelle and Cory. They're going to be chatting with me today. My name is Makayla, and I just want to start off by acknowledging that this event is being hosted on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We are honored to work, live, and play on these lands together. And I also want to note that this workshop is being sponsored by the BMO Financial Group. Thank you very much, BMO. Okie dokie, let's jump right in. So to start off, I just want to ask you both kind of what your experience has been with direction and maybe how you got into it and maybe when that was and maybe kind of like what drew you to be interested in getting into direction in the first place. Michelle, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Makayla. Yeah, so I started off as an actor. I did my undergraduate training at the University of Lethbridge in performance. That's where I always felt the most comfortable. I did some directing courses in my undergrad as well as in high school, but I always felt really overwhelmed being a director. I was like, oh, absolutely not, which I laugh about now, of course, in hindsight. Um, and then after I finished my university degree, I went to my hometown in Fort McMurray, Alberta, where I was working quite frequently as an actor and some other theatrical endeavors, as we all do. Um, and Fort McMurray, Alberta, some of you know, it's a heavy oil industry community. And in the mid 2000s, a lot of change happened to the economic structure of Fort McMurray, and that resulted in all our fine arts post-secondary training being canceled. And with that being canceled, a lot of our full-time theater artists who were the directors in the play now were out of jobs in the community and they left. So our community was left with a lot of eager performers, but not a lot of directors, producers, and individuals who were really doing the startups. So as someone in my community that had training, education in theater, I was like, well, I'll direct a play, I'll try. And I fell in love with the work. And I ended up directing a play that was a part of the Alberta Dramatic Fine Arts Festival. So it's a provincial wide competition of one acts. And my play actually won Best Production and I won Best Director. And that sort of started the ball rolling on maybe I might have a knack for this. And I don't know, I was coming to a place in my own personal life too where I just wasn't getting that same like, from acting, you know, that feeling when you go on stage, that like those endorphins that fly and that feeling of satisfaction when you leave stage. That feeling started to lessen for me. I still loved theater, but acting wasn't doing it for me. So everything sort of happened like in a pretty organic process for me. And again, as I said, in my community where there wasn't a lot of people that were taking the helm as the director, I had a lot of opportunity to work. So I just took every gig I could. I directed smaller plays for one act festivals, and I ended up starting my own independent theater company in Fort McMurray as well, which was phenomenal. And during the wildfires in Fort McMurray of 2016, I was displaced from my home and my career for 6 weeks. Kind of I'm having a little bit of deja vu during the pandemic right now. But, you know, as I think a lot of us have realized, time away from our projects and our career allows us to do some reflection on ourselves. And it really made me realize how much I love directing, but there were still some of those like real tools that I felt that I was missing. And I wanted more mentorship because, as I said, I was sort of one of the leaders in my own community, but I didn't feel like, kind of felt like the emperor has no clothes. You know, I need to work with people that have more experience and more training and different ideas and come from a different community. So I applied to do my master's degree at UBC and I got accepted to the program. And yeah, it's been like a wild ride. I just graduated a year and a half ago now. And of course, now we're in these COVID-19 times. So there's lots of reflection again on what the next steps could be. So I'm really thrilled to be a part of this ECOS team and, you know, to be able to speak with other directors such as Cory, who has different training and experience than I do. So even the work that I've had the privilege of chatting with you so far, I've being able to absorb so much. So yeah, I still feel like I'm like re-emerging myself again, you know, like I was a professional director, went back to school, re-emerging and re-emerging to a world that does not look anything like the world that I entered into. So I'm here for it. I'm here for connecting with people and telling stories, and I'm excited to see what the next chapter holds for all of us.
Great. Yes. I mean, I guess we're always learning, especially right now in this crazy time.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, Cory, I'd love to hear kind of your side and what your training has looked like. And I know you've done some performance as well. So what that transition has been like and all those things.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Makayla. Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I also trained as an actor. I being in the arts was never part of my plan. I actually wanted to become a pilot. I went to flight school after high school, but I was quite young, and I wanted to have that university experience. So I went to TAP. I auditioned for two theater schools, one in New York and one in Vancouver. I'd never done a monologue in my life or anything. So anyways, I trained as an actor, and then quickly after theater school, I realized that I needed to diversify, or else I didn't. Not that the whole, auditioning game is not fun or anything, but I felt that if I wanted to work more consistently, I would have to do other things in my career. And so I had kind of assisted directed. I'd looked up to people who were directors who I'd worked with, and I decided to put on my own show with some friends. And the point of that show was to give opportunities to emerging artists. And that was kind of the basis of our first company. And kind of learned a lot by doing, like Michelle, just producing shows and creating work. And then I felt as well that I didn't have the kind of maybe base training in directing. Not that you need it, but I felt like I needed a bit more understanding of what I was doing. My master's is not in directing. My master's is in actor training. So I really, another reason why I got into directing is my father was a professional athlete, a professional hockey player and hockey coach. And I saw a lot of similarities between being a coach and being a director. And I love working with actors and understanding how actors work. And that was something I felt coming out of theater school, is our training wasn't very varied. It was very focused on one style of acting, and directors don't have a language to talk about other styles of acting. We're very unaware. And so my master's was in actor training. And so I'm able to work with a wide range of artists with different backgrounds, different approaches, and the coaching element, I think, is the one thing that I really appreciate in my directing career. And on top of creating works that I hope will entertain and shock and kind of explore, the weird things that we do as humans. Coaching actors is one of my big loves, and that's what I really enjoy as a director.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I love that comparison, coaching versus act or directing, kind of similar. So I don't know exactly what my question is for this, but like you both have performed and you both have been on the other side of the table. I guess my question is like in the beginning years of when you started to sort of transition more to the other side of the table, what was that experience like in terms of like what did you learn about like the show as a whole from all of a sudden stepping like out of the picture and watching it opposed to being inside the picture? And just like what was that experience like for you as you transitioned from being a performer towards being a director? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, take it away.
Do you want to go, Michelle, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a million ways I could answer that question. The two, I guess the two biggest sort of realizations, learning lessons over the process of transitioning from the other side of the table, as you said. The first one would be, I think maybe although I love to work collaboratively, I really like to start my rehearsal process by stating that every single person in this room is an artist of equal contributing value to the project. And that's really, really important to me. And I think what I realized was that through all of my experience working with previous directors as an actor, how vital the energy that you bring into the room is as a director, how deeply impactful that is, and whether that is to take up a lot of space or to take up minimal space, however that means, that you really are, you're the conduit, you know, like you're the connector of so many different lines of communication, and you're the go-between for so many different people, from from the people in the box office to marketing to your acting team to your designers to the producers, and just being aware of who you are. I preach a lot of like, take care of yourself to my actors, like get rest and do kind things for yourself. But how important it is, I think, for directors to do the same as well. Like I'm guilty as I think everyone else, where I will stand and talk through notes during all my breaks in a rehearsal, and I'll just power back coffees all day long because I don't want to take time to eat. But that doesn't make me like the best person in the world. That doesn't make me insanely like patient or focused. And I guess being aware of my own personal traits and the energy that I bring into the room has been a huge learning lesson through this whole process, especially when you're working with younger actors and student actors. Uh, they're really looking to you so much for this feedback, even just in how you stand in the room. So the awareness of how important it is to be taking care of yourself and to recognize the energy that you're bringing in the room. That's a big one. And then for me, the second takeaway is just warping your brain for text analysis, how you read a script. That was one of my biggest takeaways that I would say my master's degree gave me as well. Is I think even though I was able to take a step back and see what that whole story was and what the story was without like biasing it based on individual characters, it really wasn't until I started doing script analysis work at UBC with John Cooper and Chelsea Hamberlin and Stephen Malloy that I really feel like I was able to put director eyes onto a script. And it's I mean, it's intricate and you need to be intricate, but you also need to step so forward for back at the same moment as well. You need to know every detail, but you need to see every tree and the forest at the same time. And I think as an actor, you can get a little bit more tunnel visioned into your character and who you're playing and what my thoughts are and where my prop is. And, I need my light over here, et cetera, et cetera. So those I would say would be the two biggest transitional moments, is like the power that I bring into the room, even when I'm trying to have minimal power. And then also just the way that you interpret a script in order to put those puzzle pieces back together to stage the action.
Cool. Yeah. I feel like you mentioned something that I feel like sometimes actors can get a bad rap sometimes for being a little bit, like selfish, in that like sometimes we think that we're the most important part of the show.
It is your job though, and it's, I think our job as director to be able to know how to work with all of those items. But it is funny. I know now that I'm a director and I think back on some times where I thought like my director was ignoring me or didn't care about me, and I want to be like, I'm really sorry. I realized that you had 10,000 other things that you were trying to work through. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's what you said at the very beginning, that everybody is an artist of equal value and everybody has so much important work that they're all doing. And I think we all just need to know that. Anyways.
Exactly. We just have like a different kind of avenue that we're contributing, but each contribution is of equal value.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cory, same question.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of that too is to allow or to make sure that the actor is involved at the bigger picture of the whole process. Like, actors get this rap that they are selfish, and part of that, I think, is as a director you have to lead everyone working with the same world, the same script at all times, not just on your character or your part. And that's the quality of leadership. And like Michelle, I agree. Like, I like to work collaboratively. I think there's an immense amount of importance placed on building an ensemble and building really a team. Again, it's this whole coaching, directing thing has kind of played my whole career now, because every analogy I make is between sports and directing, but it is exactly that. It's just creating a team, all working together towards a same, everyone has to be able to articulate the end goal, right? Not the product, but where we're striving to get. And I think a lot of the times, actors might just come in for their scene. They have no idea what's going on in other scenes, like things like that. We have to make sure that everyone is involved at the same level on the larger scope. And that was something that that really kind of made me aware of that, the transitioning over to the other side. And the other thing too, I was going to say is, as an actor, I know how to talk to actors now as a director, because I was an actor. And I think that has been huge, because I don't just sit behind my desk or behind my music stand. I get up, I play around with the actors. I'm really involved. And I think that allows a certain relaxation on behalf of the actor, that I'm not just this guy in the back going, yeah, move over here, and then I'm just telling people what to do and not getting involved. But that's not the case, because I know what it feels like. So now I know that I have to show that I'm also part of this. I can't just sit back and tell people what to do.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. You're probably going to be repeating yourself a little bit, but I'm curious to know if you could put it into like a one sentence, like dictionary description, what would you say is the role of the director? Like, in your personal words, what would you say? Short and sweet. Whoever has it first, go. I can play some music in the background.
Wow, that's a good question. Huh.
I know. I feel like I have keywords.
Yeah,
that I'm
exactly.
trying to string together.
Bullet form works.
I think for me, it's organizing and articulating a world, and that means both for the audience and for the actors I work with, for my designers, for myself. Yeah,
I know.
it's such a tough question. It takes so many levels too. There's like the world of the show, what is the task of directing, what each project is asking of, or what each piece is asking of you. There's the director in relationship to its collaborators, the director in relationship to, the text that you're servicing or not servicing. So there's this kind of organization and articulation of something, whatever that is, onto a stage and onto a set of people that will be working with you.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like the
kind of done.
Supporting and enabling a team of artists in the cohesive telling of a story.
Love it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Something. Cohesion is like a word that I like, and Cory, I love everything you're saying about this acting training. I'm like, oh no, that's my next master's degree. I want to go do that. But I think that is such a huge part of it as well. Like I put this in every single one of my workshops. I'm sorry, everyone, and it's my email signature, but this quote that I love, and it's, like a great creative leader doesn't have all the ideas. They create a room where everyone feels like they're able to share their ideas as well. And I think that speaks really truly to how I like to create a rehearsal space or create a production process. Is, as I said, it's not just about me. I've got some ideas about some things, and this is how I can contribute. But I want to hear your voice. I want to hear your ideas. That's going to infinitely make this production better. Like we are more than just one person's vision. That's not interesting to me. I'm usually, when I'm working on, like, if I've been hired on a contract and the production company is hiring my design team, I'm chomping at the bit to meet those people. Like that's one of the most exciting parts to me. And I always have questions of like, I need you. I need you to help answer some of these questions. So I love that part. I love when everyone else starts coming in and you can actually like open your brain up to other people.
Right. I forgot to mention that for everybody joining us today, if you have questions, feel free to like type them out right now, whenever you have them, in the Q&A box, or we'll also have some time at the end to do a Q&A then. So if you have questions, let us know. Okay, so I feel like this, again, try to be concise, I suppose, but like, how do you approach a new show? And can you sort of walk us through what your process is from the moment you get the script to opening night? Because I feel like there's so much that happens, and I'm just like curious to know what your guys' process is.
You're looking at me. Again, it depends on each particular project, because often I also create a lot of work. I devise work, so it won't necessarily start with the script. But I think with anything, there's got to be a desire or hunger for me to put it on, or to direct, or to create. It's got to be something that I find engaging and interesting and challenging, or else if I'm not into it, how can I lead 40 people into it? You know what I mean? And then there's just kind of a bit of sitting with the idea. And I find that I don't direct a lot. You know, there's a tendency when you're starting out to like create as much stuff and people come see it. And now, you know, we've been working on this project. I'll just use this specific example. For like 2 years, it's an idea that's kind of been in our mind, adapting the like Scandinavian noir genre to the stage. And that was an idea we had. I really loving books and movies and TV shows. So we just kind of let that sit, and then slowly an idea started forming. And then it's about, you know, either reaching out to collaborators or start discussing the ideas, get some interest, because you want your team to be interested as well. So sure, there are people I love to work with, but I also love working with new people. So it's just about getting people excited about your idea. And then getting to work with it. You know, I think Michelle can probably talk more about maybe pre-rehearsal analysis. But there's a lot of exploration in my rehearsal room. There's no real set images. There might be some ideas on what it might sound like, what it might look like, but a lot of play, a lot of exploration, and then slowly distilling that down to whatever the end goal is. And there's lots of room for change always, every night. I don't think opening night is the end of a director's work. I work a lot as an assistant or an associate director as well, and I think it's really important that the work keeps going past opening night. That's a very North American kind of Western Anglophone thing, that opening night, everything is set in stone, don't touch it. It's like, well, no, if we're trying to somehow, you know, reveal contradictions and different things in the human being, then nothing is the same every night. So that's important to me too, to make sure that things are left lively and we strive towards that in rehearsals and stuff like that. It's kind of ominous what I'm saying, but it's not a singular way of working either. I don't work the same way on every show.
Cool.
But maybe Michelle does. I know different directors do different things. I don't know.
Oh, well, specifically with new work, I think maybe one of my favorite parts about working on a new work in development, and this is my experience, is I primarily get to establish a really close relationship with the playwright, which is what I love. And with, I guess, both of the most recent new works that I've directed or worked on. I'm actually doing costume design for a new work right now, which I also love. Again, Cory, many hats, right? Is really being able to get right to the source. I love about theater, I love that we get inside human lives and human experiences in such a like visceral and vulnerable way. And there's oftentimes I mean, all the time when I'm reading a play and I want to talk to the playwright, like, why did you write this? What was going on? What are you trying to express? What were you feeling? What were the colors in your mind? What did it sound, feel, taste like? And when you're developing new work, I get to ask those questions, which is awesome, and really like indulge in the inner working of that. And it's something that I guess that's quite different because, if I'm directing something, by a playwright who's deceased or has zero time to answer an email from a director from Vancouver, Canada, there's a lot of making those choices for yourself and doing like your own research and other practical script analysis, which is great. And I love approaching scripts like that. But there is something also really interesting about that conversation with the playwright and actually being able to develop a relationship, because I feel like it's almost it's a gift. You're like creating a gift for them, like you're almost I don't know, like you're their wedding planner or something. They're telling you this fantasy and this story and this experience, and you're now trying to translate that, and having them at the source is really interesting. So I love to get like really deep into the nitty gritty details. Like, as I said, I want to know, like, what were you feeling at this time? What were your influences at this time? What were you listening to in music? What were you watching on TV? What were you reading? I want to like almost put myself like into their life and their perspective at that time. And I think that's an interesting way of approaching directing that, as I said, you don't get if you're directing Henrik Ibsen or Arthur Miller. Yeah.
Right on. So I have a question. I feel like you both have done a little bit of assistant directing, I assume, in your time. So like on the other side of the table, sort of like a two-part question. What were some of the biggest things that you learned from being an assistant director, and also like in the audition room, like for actors as well? Like, what are the things that you love that when an actor brings in, or the things that they walk in and you're like, oh no? Like, what were the things that you learned about the audition process from like your first experiences as an assistant director from the director? Cory.
I think what was the first part of the question? What they love. That was the second part. What was the first part?
The first part was just sort of like working with maybe different directors who have different approaches and things like that than you. Like, what were the things that you kind of like learned just by being on that side and assisting? And then also, like, what did you learn from them, and in your own opinion, when you were on the other side watching the auditions?
Yes. I think in terms of auditions, well, as an assistant director, I think what I've really realized is actors are very emotional, sensitive people that need a bit of that need a support. And as an assistant director, I think a lot of my work is pastoral care and being a sounding board for actors. And that's not a negative thing. I think actors need, if the director hasn't done a good enough job of setting up a room where people are free to try things and communicate and take risks, they need a place to be able to do that. And I see that especially from directors who are very peculiar about what they want their show to look like. Actors feel kind of robbed of their own ownership and responsibility and creativity. And so that's something as an assistant director that I've encountered a lot, and I'm happy to do that work because I think it's important to allow performers to really take ownership of what they're doing on stage, and sometimes they're robbed of that by certain directors. So conversely, in auditions, for example, that's one of the things that I've learned from watching different auditions and stuff is, one, an actor is not going to read your mind. So they're going to come in with one choice, and that choice is great, but we can't expect them to know what we want, and I don't know what I want. So I try to spend a lot of time with actors in auditions, and I've learned that from watching other directors. Mark Rylance, sorry, he's a British director. He spends like 45 minutes per audition with an actor, and they'll just play around and stuff. So spending some time, allowing actors to try different things and to have a say and to hear their story, their personality, but their connection to the story as well. That's something I learned being an assistant in the room. And Michelle, please jump in at any moment. I'm just trying to think of all the lessons I've learned as an assistant director. And I think as well, as an assistant director, I've learned to really learn how to communicate, because we're kind of the go-between between everything when the director doesn't have enough time. So we really have to be on top of understanding the ins and outs of every aspect of the production and being able to communicate those at any moment. I quickly stopped assistant directing people that wanted me to get coffee and stuff. Not that that's a bad thing, but we have this thing where we call assistant directors assistant to the director in Vancouver, which is such a shame because that's not the role of the associate director. In the UK, it's something that's actually unionized and very important. And I think it's just another collaborator and another person to help make the production the best that it can be.
Right on.
Yeah, I've had all really positive experiences, both being an assistant director as well as having assistant directors work with me as well. And Cory, I love what you just said about how often the role of an assistant director is really to be there to be there for the actors as well, to have an extra person that they can come to, and whatever it is that they need to talk about or they're dealing with at that time, to have someone that's there and that's trusted for them and that they know has their back and is there for them. The last show I directed, it was really high energy and really fast paced, and we had, some of the most like established professional actors in Canada working on the show, and it was the show didn't. It was working on its own. Do you know what I mean? It didn't really like need me to direct, but it also was intense and challenging. And I really learned that how much and this goes back to my other answer before, but sometimes just being like a warm presence in the room, like a smiling person that's cheering everybody on, like you've got this, and I'm appreciating what you're doing. I see that choice that you're making in the background, to have that extra bit of support for the actors is lovely. I also have realized too, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's through different angles, that we don't need to take up as much space as we think we do. This idea of like the director who comes in and all grandiose and everyone gather around and listen to me, but I feel it's the actors or the directors that actually take a step back and let the actors work through some things. And as Cory just mentioned, take ownership of their own work, that's really magical. And in terms of your question with the auditions, it was surprising for me when I did my last assistant director position at the auditions, how nervous people still get. Sometimes I forget, like, I just think that once you've hit a certain level, like it's all confidence all the time. But it is surprising, as Cory said, like that it's a vulnerable situation. And even if you've gotten to the place where you can, mentally say to yourself, like, it's not everything if I don't get the part, it's not personal, there still is something disheartening about putting yourself out there and having your fate is in someone else's hands. And that's
especially if you know that you have like 5 minutes to make your point, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely. And if, say, you're like a newer actor and you've just seen, a Jessie Award-winning actor walk out of the room right before you, there's so many variables that make that experience uncomfortable, I think. And when I was just recently assistant directing, our director stood up and greeted every single person at the same level. He got up from his chair, he shook their hand, he made eye contact with them. He established a rapport as a human, not just, well, what work have you done and who have you worked with? He let them have an opportunity to be a human, to feel comfortable and to feel like welcomed and supported in that space. And it was a beautiful environment. It was fun. And then, we're auditioning for a comedy. So of course you want people to be relaxed and to be breathing and in their body so that they can do the best that they can. And maybe that's something to like shout out there too is, I can't speak for all directors, but I think the majority of us want you to succeed, and we want you to have fun and feel proud of the work that you've done and that you've been seen and you've been appreciated. And I just want you to know we want that. I want that. I'm here for you. Like, I'm here to cheer you on. I want you to have a good time at the audition.
I want to add too, I think a lot of it comes from theater school training. You're told what are the do's and don'ts of casting rooms, of audition rooms, of how you should do your resume, and some of it is totally valid, but God, no, like you know, don't look at the director. You come in, you go to the piano, you just be a normal person. And I hope that directors that are listening to this treat their actors as human beings. Like we've been so hammered in, like, this is what you should look like, this is what you should wear. Well, no, you don't have to wear anything. Ultimately, I want to see you act. I don't care if you look like the character or not. So it's managing all those expectations as well that are drilled into students or actors professionally. So my job is to understand that too, and just make sure that I don't become that person. And we all run our rooms differently, so you can't prepare for everyone. So as long as you're yourself and you're just and that's our responsibility too, is to make sure that you feel like you are yourself. Then it's good for everyone.
Yeah, I had a director start the audition off. It was a dance call, but she was directing and choreographing. It was a dance call, and she started the dance call. We all did like 5 minutes of yoga together. She was like, I just want everyone to breathe, like take a second. It was so great. Yeah.
I like to, especially at my callbacks, I like to call everyone. I mean, again, depends on the show, but generally speaking, I do love to call everyone back. And I'll lead them in like a 20-minute warm up all together and try to like start that off as a group project. And like, I'm standing here with you guys. We're in a circle. We're all equals in this process. And I just, as you said, I want us to breathe together. And to also, Cory, you mentioned this earlier about having everyone engaged in the world of the play from the onset. So it's not getting into your individual tunnels. It's like an invitation to the world. And I love to do that at the callback process as well. So as I'm doing a warm up, I also like to talk a little bit about what my idea is for the show and what the world is, and get everyone thinking about, I just directed it, or I tried to, but COVID ate it, a production of The Great Gatsby. And so there was a lot of, I played some music from the 1920s as we were doing the warm up, and I had the lights just a little bit dim. And, we had a couple furniture pieces in the callback room that were in like that 1920s sort of Art Nouveau sort of style, just to get people sort of into the space in the room, and also together as well, so you're not seeing this like two people walking out of the room feeling really smug and one person nervous in the corner. It's everyone's on an equal ground starting the day off.
A team.
Yeah, team.
I have some great questions here that I think I just want to jump into, but sorry, we don't run out of time. So we have a question here from Elizabeth saying, how do you handle it when an actor interprets a character differently than you might have wanted? Are you open to their interpretation, or do you stick to your own vision? And how do you navigate that? Michelle?
Yeah, always. And I like to make that statement really clear at the beginning of the rehearsal as well, of, I have ideas about who I think these characters are and what your, highest moments of action are in the story and how you relate to other people. But I'm always interested in how the actor is interpreting it, because ultimately they're the ones who are embodying this character and bringing it to life on stage. They're the ones that have to make it organic and honest to themselves. They're the ones that are living, breathing, and eating it. So I think for me, I'm there to help guide and shape and mold. And I always think too that like, go back to the script, and that's, maybe Cory might be able to talk about in devised work. I don't have as much experience with that, but if there's times where I think that it's conflicting to the action of the overall story, then we go back to the text. We look at the text. What is the playwright trying to say? Look at the punctuation, look at, the event that happened before, really going back to the bare bones of the script, to see, because I think everything can be interpreted, but you also want to make sure that the story isn't running off the rails either. You want to make sure that it's still that cohesive story that the playwright is intending. But I think there is always, always, always room for interpretation. And as I said, not just welcome it, but I almost like require it. Like I want you, this is a conversation. It's not me giving you your to-do list for your character. It's a conversation about who this person is and how they feel for you.
Great.
Yeah, I definitely totally agree. I think one way that I look at it, I don't talk a lot about character in my rehearsals. I direct through situations and dramatic situations, and therefore the character to me is what the audience. A character is what you become once you've surpassed or succeeded or failed at the situation that you're in. So it's something that the audience is going to see from the outside. If the circumstances and the situation is so strong that the actor has nothing else to do but get up on their feet and act, whatever comes from that actor is what is right for that actor. I'm not going to pretend that you need to become someone else, because I don't really, I have trouble with that personally. When I hear my character wouldn't do this, wouldn't do that, we don't know, because as a human being, if you were pushed to the limit enough, I'm sure anyone could be pushed to do really awful things. And so it all comes back to the situation. If the situation is wrong, then that's going to be obvious. But if the situation is right, then whatever the actor brings is going to be the right call, because they're responding from their own life. So absolutely, yeah.
Great. I have another great question here for both of you. So it says, how can directors communicate with designers if they don't have as much technical experience? The director doesn't have that much technical experience. Do either of you have personal experience with that, or have seen things, or have tips?
Yeah. Obviously you're going to have a conversation with your designer, but I think if you don't have much technical knowledge, take the time during rehearsals to sit with your designers and learn that knowledge. It's super valuable. I've learned so much about lighting, which is insane, what directors don't know about lighting. But I think one of the most basic things to do right off the top is share images, music, photos, colors with your designer, and try to articulate that world in a non-technical way, in a emotional way and sensorial way. And then they're the expert at their job, right? So it's a continuous communication. If something is not right, if I'm offered something and I feel this doesn't quite feel right, we go back to that drawing board of what the basis of the show is, what our goal is. But refer back to your images, refer back to and the designer should also, we should have, a shared Google Doc or Dropbox with music and all these things. And then you create a vocabulary between the two of you that is not necessarily technical, but it's your vocabulary. And I think that's one way to just on a very basic level approach the conversation. But be interested in what they have to say, especially on the technical level. It's theater is so fascinating what you can create on stage, and it will also help you run your technical rehearsals more smoothly, I promise you.
100%. I echo everything you just said, Cory. One of my first directing experiences, I sat and my assistant director was also my lighting designer, and I sat in on her light install and her focus, and like the terminology that I learned, I remember being like, can we just get it up a notch? And she's like, well, a notch isn't really a word that, works for us. I was like, oh, I have so many things to learn. And I totally agree. I always think too, artists, creative types, so all humans, we all learn in different ways. So having, typed verbiage, having images, having resources to share with your designers is so good. I also too, I love to start my design conversations with like, what are you interested in right now? What's a technique or a skill that you've been curious about, or something that you're excited in? Like, how can we incorporate what you do and what makes you excited to do theater into this project? I love to to ask my designers that as well. So it's not just this is what I think I need and this is what I'd like, but also I want to ask them too, like, what's going to make you excited to work on this project? What's going to make you want to stay up at night? What's going to make you excited to come to technical rehearsals and watch your work be realized?
And conversely too, I mean, I'm not saying as a director be like, you know, I want to do Shakespeare and it's set in a pool. Like, I don't think that's how you should approach the script. It's got to come from the show itself, from the idea of the show. But like Michelle said, ask the designer what they're interested in, but also take risks as a director. Work with people you've never worked that work in a totally different way than you would. And it'll just open you up to other ways of articulating a vision, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, I did a TYA show a few years ago of The Fantastic Mr. Fox, and rather than hire a theater designer, I hired a local visual artist who came in and mentored the students and actually taught them through making their own paper mache masks. They made all of the props for the show themselves. They made all their costume pieces themselves, and they also made their own instruments, which they played on stage. And as Cory said, because I was working with someone that's a little different than a typical designer that I would work with, we were able to explore so many other ideas and suggestions. And it was her idea to have the musical instruments, which made our musical director so excited. And now that's a component that she brings into her work as well. And it was just such an amazing way to like brainstorm ideas and to bring in other artists into the program. And yeah, it was a fabulous experience working with her.
Wow. Thanks for those wonderful answers, you guys. I have another question here. With everything going on in the world, is there a way that white presenting directors can make the spaces safe for BIPOC artists and challenge the material by doing representational casting? The big one.
Yeah, totally. In terms of casting, even if a show doesn't require, a specific skin color, religion, whatever, I think my biggest job is to, one, go see a lot of shows, know who's out there, and when I do casting calls or audition calls, it's my job, if you're not working with a casting director, it's my job to make sure that casting call is accessible to people who may not see it. And that's my work. But most of that comes from seeing shows and knowing who works in your city. And the more you see shows and the more then, when I go see shows, I might make notes of who I like. And I might just keep record of that and invite them in, especially if I've never seen them or I've never worked with them. So that's one way of doing it. And the first part of the question was what, sorry? How to make it safe for people, right?
Yeah, how to make a safe space as white presenting.
I mean, like Michelle said, we are the most dangerous person in the room as a director. I try to instill a horizontal hierarchy, not a vertical one. I try to be open in terms of communication, making sure that people are allowed to speak. It all comes back to giving ownership to the actors. Unfortunately, this is something that Lindsay Turner, she's a British director, said the other day, and I actually talked in another ECOS panel. I can't make a space totally safe. I can make it safer. We're all different individuals, so it's a question of making the space brave. Actually, Camille in our ECOS group mentioned that, making a brave space to ensure that people can speak up and can share their grievances, all while remembering that we are the most dangerous person in the room. So we hold a lot of power and we have to make room for those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, There's no like second guessing in, oh, well, I'm directing The Great Gatsby, so I'm going to do research on F. Scott Fitzgerald and on the 1920s and Prohibition. But I think as directors and as theater artists, and especially white presenting, we need to do our research. We need to learn more. We need to allow ourselves to continue to have information. Omari, who is an amazing member of our ECOS team, made some incredible book suggestions to the ECOS group. And I went on Amazon and I purchased every single one of them. So starting to read through books like White Fragility, I've also signed up for a anti-racism in the theater workshop that's taking place in August, trying to increase my own brain capacity to answer questions like these, and to be double checking my own steps. Am I making this as a safe space for people to act in as possible? You know, those continual rechecking yourself, and am I doing everything that I can? How much space am I taking up? Who am I making this space comfortable for? I say that I'm creating a safe space, but am I creating a safe space for everybody? Have I really expanded my brain enough to be looking at people who might feel unsafe in ways that aren't familiar to me? Yeah, holding myself accountable for the knowledge and the training, and to be a part of the movement forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you, Damon, for the questions. Great question. So I feel like I can kind of, okay, so I have another question here for you guys. And just what is your favorite part of the process, and what is for you the most challenging part of the process? I'm sure that's always a thing that's changing all the time, but just personally for you right now, what's kind of jumping out for you?
I love learning new things. Like I love reading a script and highlighting all the words I don't understand or the terms that I've never heard before. And I feel like as a theater artist that we're continually learning brand new bits of information and brand new bits of history and brand new bits of human experience that we might not have understood. And every project you work on, you're learning something different. It's like you're living in completely different worlds. I actually read a study that, you know, theater artists have a less chance of developing Alzheimer's and memory loss type brain conditions, because we are continually putting ourselves in different worlds. We're not retracting into this sort of same pattern of a 9 to 5 office, the same environment, the same people, the same work every single day. Our brain is continually growing and latching on to new worlds and expanding itself, which I think is really interesting.
And do you have a part that feels kind of like sometimes is really challenging for you that you need to work through, or
like casting is always so challenging for me. I'm really empathetic, and I also come from an actor's background, and I want everyone to know how valid and special they feel, and how all the millions of other minute little details that just go into casting, you know, that really do have zero to do with people's individual personal abilities. So that's always challenging, you know, because you're also you're really excited for the team that you're creating and the people that are getting the roles, and it's awesome when people fall into place, into parts, and relationships, chemistry works out. Like, that's so exciting. But then it is also just it's a gut punch to have to tell people that they didn't get this particular job, or that something that they were excited about isn't going to come through for them. Like, that sucks. It really does. I don't like that part.
for sure. Yeah. Before we jump into Cory's answer, if anyone else has any other questions, now is the time to ask. Cory, favorite parts, challenging parts, maybe it's different every day.
Yeah, I think I'm really trying to often young directors or directors in general are asked, like, what type of director are you? And I don't have an answer to that. I try to do the work that interests me. So I'm always trying to challenge the forms that I work in and the ways that I work. There's a great quote by Simon Stone that says, if theater was half as good as HBO, we wouldn't be having problems in theater. And I try to make theater that is half as good as HBO, if not better. And so I'm always thinking about ways to make theater an exciting, versatile experience and top-notch quality, whatever that means to me. So a lot of reflection, a lot of reading, a lot of yeah, imagining, trying new things. And unfortunately, it's a little hard right now. But yeah.
Right. Cool. And my final question of the day is, what advice would you go back and give yourself when you were starting out, or just what advice would you give to emerging directors, people who are interested in stepping into that role but maybe aren't sure how to begin, or just what advice would you give to the people?
I think that assistant directing or doing shadowing, if that's a possibility for you, just outreach. Try to learn from every single person you can. Every single director that you work with or shadow with is going to be different. You're going to learn different things. You're going to meet different people. So I would say in those first few years, especially if you're quite hesitant, you don't really know where to start. What's a theater company that does work that you really like? Who's a director that whose work really inspires you, or you kind of jive with, or was there a show that you really like? Do a little bit of research, reach out to people, see if anyone is able to have you come in for one day. You just want to sit in the room and learn. And being honest about it. I'm curious about directing, and I would love to learn from you. Would I be able to come and sit in your rehearsal room for a day? I'm really a big fan of this, like the power of the ask, and of course there's going to be directors that might not be as keen on it, but you are going to find someone who's excited. And then that one is going to make it easier for the next one, for the next one, for the next one. So I would say start there.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I feel like people sometimes are so afraid to ask for things in life, but no one's ever going to be mad at you for you telling them that you like their work and you are excited by what they do. Like, they maybe won't be able to accommodate that request that one time, but no one's ever going to be upset with you for asking. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Cory?
I would say take it one step further and just put on a show or create your own show. Just do it and fail or not fail.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad theater everywhere in the world. So the least you can do is give it a shot. Raise, it sounds like a lot, $700 to get into a fringe festival and put on a show with some friends. That's what I did.
Yeah.
We created a company. Just put on your own work. Don't try to copy anyone. You're unique, and then you'll learn. Then you can AD. Then you can learn about what directing is and stuff. But don't lose the. If you really want to do it, if you're really passionate and you have an image in your mind, then just try to put it on, and you'll learn by doing. Right? That's what I did. So
for sure, yeah. I feel like you always learn the most by doing. And we're gonna have two panels. One is gonna be later this week on Friday. That's about networking. So it kind of ties into like how to sort of like introduce yourself to the people that you want to work with. So we're gonna have a panel on that. I think that's Friday at 11. Then we also have a panel next week on creating new works. So that also sort of ties into putting on your first show. So stay tuned for those. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And thank you to our amazing panelists, Michelle and Cory, for all of your insight. Yes, everyone is saying thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I learned
Also,
so much from both of you.
Hi, David. Congratulations on your graduation.
Yeah, I think with that, we'll end it here for today. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you to our panelists. And thank you to the Arts Club and the BMO.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your
Bye.
Wednesday. Bye.